And there you are, an OT. Oh, Scientology.
I'm white, and I've got everything I need. No one clutches their purses when they're in a room alone with me. And I can drive through any neighborhood I please at any hour, and the police don't do a thing. So if I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I got everything I need. I'm a guy getting paid more than a girl with a degree. And I can walk down the streets after dark, no one wants to rape me. And I can get a girl pregnant and just as easily flee. Just like my straight white male dad did to me. So if I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need. I've got a pile of broken mirrors and I'm walking under ladders and I'm spilling tons of salt, but to me that doesn't matter, cause my skin and my gender and my orientation are the best things to have if you live in this nation. I recommend it highly. I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need. Shit's gonna work out for me, cause I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Intellectual Dollar Tree. We do the show every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Pacific right here on Twitch. That's twitch.tv/Echoplex Media. Support this project. Just go to echoplexmedia.com, click the support tab, pick your favorite way. Producer Dave, you can find me on Grindr.
And I'm HK Perrin. You can find me on Mastodon at hperrin@port87.social or on email hperrin@port87.com.
Well, you missed last week, which was pretty interesting because it was Russell Brand and Sam Harris. And it was
kind of sad that I missed that.
Pretty fucking weird, man.
I've been saying we should cover Russell Brand. He's like very difficult to watch, but you know, he's exactly what we go for. Someone who considers themselves a public intellectual. So but in reality, they're a fucking moron.
As we continue off of our usual beaten path, we have the Q Shaman. But he's not even the one who worships a fucking space alien on this piece of content we're going to watch. So this is Grant Cardone. He is one of those wealth influencers, sort of like a Tony Robbins type, but he's also a Scientologist.
Okay.
And he's interviewing the fucking Q Shaman.
Who is the Q Shaman again?
It's the guy who dressed up like Jamiroquai and stormed the Capitol.
Oh.
You know who we're talking about now?
Yes.
Yeah, he's
the guy with the horns, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The funniest thing, like a couple days after, somebody posted, I didn't know Jamiroquai stormed the fucking Capitol. And then Jamiroquai on Twitter goes, sorry, I wasn't there. Pretty funny shit. Anyway, this is the new American Revolution with a person who worships a space alien and the Q Shaman.
But what do you think happened? People that actually happened? I don't know, dude. I don't know.
I take it this was filmed after he got out of prison.
This was filmed this week.
Okay, so yeah.
I consider myself a patriot, and you know, when I see things that happen like that you're involved with, rather than just reading headlines, I'm like, okay, let me see if I can get this guy on a call and actually see what happened from your viewpoint. So I appreciate you taking the time to be here today. And
Yeah, I'm
imagine
glad to
what
be here.
you-
Thank you. for
Yeah.
having
Oh no, they're on a massive delay. You can hear it.
Imagine, I've seen some of the interviews. I saw the interview you recently did with the guy in London, I guess, Sky News,
me.
which was like, okay, that's more of what you get by watching the media. So hey, what happened on First of all, who are you, man? Who is Jake before January 6th? What were you doing before then?
He was doing a Jamiroquai impression.
Well, I've been practicing shamanism for over 10 years. Prior to January 6th, I was working with children in group homes, in particular teen boys.
Oh no.
That were in the group home foster care, system. I was also volunteering, working with children in an organization called Free Arts for Abused Kids of Arizona.
I take it he's not allowed to do that anymore
So
now
it's
that
like-
he's a
it's like
felon,
art
right?
therapy for children in the system.
I would presume not.
Okay.
This
I
could,
hope he's not allowed to do that anymore. Poisoning the minds of our youth.
this could also be like a bunch of bullshit where he like volunteered once or twice, you know?
Yeah.
I also had like a spiritual slash some shamanic counseling service thing that I had on
Sure you did,
for
buddy.
a while. I had a YouTube channel where I was trying to get all this information regarding spiritual nature to reality.
The mole children, the
corruption,
fucking tunnels into the
politics,
Getty.
how the
I'm guessing a lot of
spiritual
drugs were involved in
blindness
his
that
past.
we have.
I don't know. Because my impression is somebody calls themselves a shaman. It's just somebody who's going to give you DMT and then ruin your experience by trying to force it to be spiritual, right?
Yeah.
grown to have has caused us to be politically,
Although maybe some people like that
socially
experience.
inept and blind. And so I had a lot that I was doing. I wrote a book in 2017 that I published in 2020. There's I've had a lot that I've been doing ever since.
His book is
January
probably
6th.
wild.
January 6th is a very small part of my story.
But it is.
I feel like it's the only part that anyone actually cares about.
I mean, I knew who he was beforehand, but that's because of the water I was swimming in, right? Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, the only reason like most people have any idea who this is because he stormed the Capitol. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think even the space alien worshiper is going to bring that up.
Part of my story.
But it is an event that will pretty much, you'll be identified with probably for forever, right?
Yeah, well, let's hope I do things that are greater than that.
I agree with that. I believe that you will. What is shamanism?
Shamanism is the oldest religion in the world. It is the oldest religion because it is the first
Is that
religion.
true?
It's basically like the term shaman.
Did he say it's the oldest religion because it's the first religion?
I mean, I guess that. I mean,
You don't say.
I mean, I guess it follows. Grant's going to be like, okay, where's the grift?
Mongolian, and it means the one who knows. So it doesn't necessarily prescribe to just a man or a woman. It could be either a man or a woman. And it's basically somebody that knows and understands the healing plants in the ecosystem, knows and understands the spirit world, et cetera, et cetera. So, shaman is
Knows and understands the
anthropologist.
healing plants and the spiritual world.
Yes.
Got it.
Have assigned to anybody that has largely indigenous beliefs, so the Siberians, the Mongolians, Native Americans, the Amazonians, the Aborigines in Australia, they all have shamanic beliefs.
And so,
But this is just like calling anything that isn't Christian pagan, right? Because he's just saying that these are all shamanism or whatever. But I don't think that that's true.
I mean, I guess shamanism is whatever you want it to be.
how does someone become a shaman? Like, is that self-declared?
Yeah, that's self-declared. Actually, you just act weird enough at a psytrance party, and you can be a shaman.
How do you anoint you that? I mean, how does that go about?
Well, for the most part, it's usually like a familial thing. A lot of the time, I'd say probably like over 90% of the time, a person is initiated through an apprenticeship that they have with somebody that is like a shamanic practitioner master of sorts.
It's like shoulder tapping for beer, kind of.
In my case, which is a very rare case, I was self-initiated into all of these things. Usually,
me too.
like
I'm a
I said,
shaman
there's
now.
mentor apprenticeship type of relationship that is in that. I
mean, yeah, I
tradition.
guess you
But
just
what I
declare
did
yourself
is
a
I did
shaman,
a lot of research, and I
and
did
you're
a
a
lot of,
shaman.
listening.
Can I be a
And
shaman too? I mean,
largely
I am a
began
shaman
to
too.
But I could have mentored you, and then you could have been part of my shaman downline.
initiate myself.
We'll just say you did mentor me.
Other forms.
I mean, if we're making it all up anyway,
that were from all around the world, whether it be tattooing, whether it be retreats into nature, whether it be, psychedelic plant consumption, what have you. I pretty much did all these things that way I could initiate myself on this path.
So he did a bunch of mushrooms and called himself a shaman.
he said he consumed plants.
Yeah, mushrooms.
Mushrooms aren't plants, but I wouldn't expect him to know that actually. So
I wouldn't expect us to get hung up on that.
And so,
I mean, I think he means ayahuasca, right? Isn't that a plant?
Sure. The ayahuasca, then you have to fucking shit yourself and throw up a bunch.
Shaman before January 6th. Was there a following? Did you have a group, or were you meeting with other people?
No.
Explain that to me, because I'm just curious and I don't understand.
Oh, he did have a following, but it was like more like people like me and the QAA people and stuff. He had a following. People were definitely kind of interested in what the fuck was going on with the dude dressed up like Jamiroquai, but no, he didn't have like a shamanic practice going on.
Well, let's talk for a second about what shamans largely believe, and then how it is basically become the oldest religion in the world. So all shamans or shamanic cultures believe that, number one, life is all connected. It's all interconnected. It's one unified field of one collective soul. They all believe in God, basically. Number two, all shamanic cultures and traditions believe in the idea of like a spirit world, and there being positive and negative spirits in that spirit world, and that spirit world actually intersects with our own, that it is blends with
Okay,
our
this
own.
is absolutely not what the oldest religions in the world believed, because they believed that the sun was a god.
Oh, he might get to that part.
Number three, all shamanic cultures believe in the notion of like healing and miraculous healing of sorts. And most of the time, the shamanic practitioner will ally themselves with positive spirits and with God to ensure that this healing occurs. Another aspect of shamanism is always singing and dancing, drumming, traditional song and stuff like that.
That's just human.
Through this method, this is another way that
anyone who sings songs is a shaman.
Songs from the old times. Whenever that was.
Or now. You didn't know this, but Taylor Swift, she's a shaman.
Positive spirits, they banish negative spirits, they get in touch with God, and thus they heal.
I will say that definitely Taylor Swift banishes negative spirits.
I'm getting the feeling that fucking Grant Cardone is not that interested in what this guy's saying.
To shamanism is the use of sacraments, sacred plants, sacred incense and stuff like that. In some cases also to heal or to create altered states of consciousness that allow one to get in touch and in tune with the spirit world. They also all believe in the idea of like going through ordeals of some sort.
I mean, everybody, this so far has been an ordeal.
Tattooing come into play, or like long pilgrimages, or like, vision quests, 4 days and 4 nights in, the wild without any food or water, etc.
That's just called getting lost.
Kind of have very similar beliefs. They also all believe in some form of prayer or meditation to get in touch with the spirit world, to get in touch with God, to get in touch with positive angelic spirits, banish evil demonic spirits, and help oneself to heal. So if you think about it, all of these things that I just described, they describe all modern religions. They all have different varying beliefs based on all the stuff that I just explained. So
the Grant Cardone is like, boy, have I got news for you. Where are the fucking DC-8s?
in a way, all religions at their root are shamanic in nature. And this is part of the reason
okay.
why
So
I practice
every
shamanism.
religion is shamanism.
So,
Except Scientology.
I've been practicing shamanism for a little over 10 years now. I started kind of dabbling in it here and there in like 2011, but I really started in 2010, but I really started like going down the path in 2012.
For someone who's been into something for 10 years, he sure is really bad at explaining it.
They're just trying to fill time here, I think.
Following the shamanic tradition, shamans are largely they focus on solitude. They withdraw from society. They withdraw from culture. And this is because
I do like that the guy's phone started ringing right as soon as he was saying they withdraw from society.
Also, he's
ironic.
He's still using the ringtone from that fucking Kevin Spacey show. What the fuck was the name of that show? And I forget now.
That's just the default iPhone ringtone.
Oh, I didn't know that.
To gain an objective view of reality, not one that is seen through a cultural paradigm, but rather one that is seen through the objective lens of truth.
And so, what did you discover on this? When you went deep on this, like, is this where you started being? I think you talked about
the tunnel children.
There's a light side and a dark side. I don't think you said it exactly like that.
And a Gad side.
Which I believe, I'm in total agreement with everything on this list of things, except maybe for the hallucinogenics.
Oh, that's right, because Scientologists don't do drugs.
But wait, he believes that there's a God? Scientologists don't believe that there's a God.
Well, I mean, if you loosely define God, it could be either L. Ron Hubbard or Xenu.
Okay, I guess so. I mean, they believe in thetans, like spirits.
I had a drug problem, so I'm probably not the right person to evaluate that. What about the light and the dark? I mean, is there something you discovered in these 10 years that, like, hey, our system's corrupt?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, you see...
Did you discover that our system is corrupt? You had to go through this fucking 10-year shamanic practice to realize that there is corruption in all of our institutions. Good job. I figured that by reading one newspaper.
Because it's part of the shamanic view to see things through an objective lens of truth, they withdraw from the cultural paradigm and then they look at things objectively. And one thing I've come to conclude is that our socioeconomic and geopolitical systems are so corrupt and they are so distorted because our spiritual perspective and our spiritual systems and institutions have become so corrupt and so distorted. Mm-hmm. So if we had
swing and a miss
view of objective reality and the view of objective,
this is also a thing that there's a thing that a lot of what these kind of conspiritualists do, where they'll talk about like systems, right? They'll talk about systemic problems, but then they'll bring it back to the self, that the way to fight these systems is to work on yourself, not to, organize with people in your community to do anything really. The way to break out of this system and the way to do anything is to work on yourself, your spiritual self. This is a very fucking like neoliberal, almost like libertarian way of looking at this stuff. And it takes away people's power, because now instead of like doing any sort of anything with the people in their community, be your community, like your physical community or an online community, to try to affect positive change in the world, now you just fucking shaman it and you become enlightened, and that's going to fucking fix the world.
Also, he's wrong. Like, you can break down pretty much all of like the corruption in the world to just greed, like greed and selfishness. Like, people in power become corrupt because they want more power. They're greedy.
It may not be greed. It may be desire for attention, but I guess that's just a different form of greed, maybe.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
that we are all one, that we are all interconnected, that everything is a part of the
See,
same
we're already all one, so why would you do any work with anybody else to try to change anything?
collective
All about the
soul,
individual.
or the mind of God, or the spirit of God, that we're all one unified field. And physics has come to conclude this themselves.
Physicists have come to conclude that we are all one in one unified field. Hey, buddy, go talk to Eric Weinstein next.
I don't think that's true. Physicists have absolutely not concluded that. That would be pretty big news.
Now, that being said, the illusion of the illusion of separation is the origins of evil. And it is from this illusion of separation that we get the illusion of scarcity, that we get the illusion of permanence, that we get the illusion of essentially comfort being our friend. And the people that seek to enslave us, seek to keep us divided, seek to keep us in this illusion of separation. They seek to keep us comfortable. They seek to basically create these veils that are before our eyes that hide.
Wait, his last name used to be Chansley. It used to be Jacob Chansley. And Jelly now because he's an angel?
I don't know.
Our true spiritual nature, the spiritual nature to reality, and this larger unified field. And so because we're behaving in a way,
I think Angeli is his middle
based
name.
on an illusion of
I guess he has two
separation,
middle names.
we are
Jacob
destroying
Anthony
the world,
Angeli
and we're
Chansley.
fighting one another when that's not the way that things are meant to be.
So how does all this translate to the riot? If it is a riot, if the Capitol was a riot, I don't know.
Jesus, I'm older than him.
January 6th.
He doesn't look very good for his age.
You think you would describe it as a riot?
Well, outside the Capitol? Yeah. Yeah. Inside, not so much.
Yeah. How many people?
Wait, it was a riot outside, and then once the rioters got inside, they weren't rioting anymore.
Absolutely.
How many people were there? Because I've heard.
I mean, they shit on the floor.
I'm like,
That sounds like a riot.
how many people
In
were
DC or at the Capitol?
let's say
Well, the Capitol is in D.C.
At the Capitol.
Oh, I don't know. There was at least several thousand.
Yeah, and then in DC.
In DC, probably well over 1 million.
Oh,
really?
I mean, are you counting the people that live there? Sure.
And they're,
I mean, just round
they're
up.
in DC
There were, like 10 or 12 billion.
because Trump said, "Hey, come support."
That's a question I get a lot. And I think that it was more than that. You see, a lot of people think, people were in DC because Trump this, Trump that. I think people were in DC because they were fed up with corruption. I think people were in DC because, and remember, there were 2 Mega Million marches before the one on January 6th.
I thought he said Mega Million, like the lottery, but he said MAGA Million. One of the MAGA Million marches had less than 1,000 people at it.
So it was a total of 3. And I went to the second one. I went to the one on December 12th, and everything was fine. Everything was peaceful. And that's what I was expecting more of on January 6th. So
when you're saying there's the million marches, Jake, are you saying there was one on December? I didn't know that. December 12th. When was the earlier one?
It was sometime in November. It was like sometime in like mid-November. Then there was another one on December 12th, and then there was another one on January 6th. So there was 3. Okay. There was 3 MAGA Million marches, and the first 2 were peaceful.
What was the intention of the Mega Million marches, and who promoted those or organized them?
Well, the intention was to draw attention to the corrupt election in 2020. But the thing is, and this is my own personal view, but I think that the MAGA Million marches were indicative of
Oh, this is the thing. It's called shit kicker inflation. It's how everything gets really big when it's conservative. It's like how you 1 million moms or whatever, and you go to their Twitter and they have like 30,000 followers.
Something more deeply rooted in the United States.
The stated intention of like that rally was to stop the procedures that were taking place on January 6th.
Right. The name the main organizing group was called Stop the Steal.
Yeah, like they were trying to stop the legislature from counting the ballots of the electoral college.
Or at least that was the stated mission of that was the stated mission of one of the major organizers. I don't know what every individual was doing there. We watched it live on the channel here. I think a lot of them were just there for the gram, honestly. And I think that's why that's why it wasn't worse.
Sure, but like he's painting it as this picture of like no one was there to stop anything. Like absolutely they were.
Right,
we were just there to raise awareness.
Which is weird too, because he was convicted of the thing that he says no one was there to do, which is a little odd.
Yep. Yeah, we were just there to raise awareness by kicking down windows and stealing doors.
2020 election. I mean, think about it. How is it that Hillary Clinton was able to erase 33,000 emails and that when not get charged while she was being investigated?
Because 33,000 emails fits on one of these. Like and it's nothing. Like you can erase 30,000 emails out of your out of your spam folder.
Like, and that's like irrelevant, right? Like that's like years ago. Like, I don't know, maybe she got away with the fucking email crime of the century, but that doesn't have anything to do with January 6th.
As far as I know, there were 10 instances of confidential information that were found on her server. Maybe she deleted a whole bunch more. Maybe all 30,000 were confidential.
But what if she committed the email crime of the century even? That has nothing to do with what they're talking about.
Yeah, she's not president.
That they were able to do Russia for 4 years.
That was just Rachel Maddow.
Spy on a man.
She burned her career down doing that. I agree.
President and try to remove him from office, and there be no consequences.
But they tried to do it via impeachment, which is the legal process by which you attempt to remove a president, sir.
And they impeached, like the impeachment had nothing to do with Russia. Either impeachment had nothing to do with Russia.
Daylight on live television like they did with JFK, and then it just gets brushed under the rug. How is it that literally hundreds, like over 100 men, women, and children can be burned alive in Waco, Texas, and then it just gets brushed under the rug?
It didn't get brushed under the rug. It was the biggest news story of the year. Like the fucking siege at Waco was the biggest news story of that year. Like, there's no way there was a bigger news story that year, at least a bigger national news story than Waco. It's just we don't fucking report on it every day anymore because it happened a long time ago.
How is it that the Pentagon can be hit and the Twin Towers and Building 7 can all go down controlled demolition style? And
controlled demolition style? What do you mean?
I mean, if that was a controlled demolition, that was the sloppiest controlled demolition I've ever seen.
Nothing. No.
Has he ever seen a controlled demolition? Like
we're not going to get into the demolition of the towers here. This is all just fucking like conspiracy theory gish gallop, right? He's just bringing up. I mean, if he doesn't bring up MK Ultra in the next 30 seconds, he's stupid, because at least that one was real.
Except for 9/11 report, 9/11 commission. Here you go.
Do you think he believes in chemtrails?
I would absolutely be fucking stunned if he does not. I just have to. You assume the shit's a buffet. It's not a la carte. Except there's Bigfoot people who are cool.
How come it is that nobody's talking about the very obvious questions that are asked, that should be asked there? And what's happened in Maui just now? You know, so
what happened in Maui? Oh no, he believes in the fucking space lasers.
Yeah, I was gonna say he probably thinks. Yeah, what is that exactly? They think like the government started it on purpose. with space lasers? Is that what they think?
So the great thing, HK, you should know this. The great thing about a conspiracy theory, especially something like that, is you don't actually have to fill in all the fucking holes in it, right? You don't have to do any fucking reporting and find out what's going on. It's them. And we all know who them usually is.
Okay, so they started it with space lasers.
Or maybe 5G tower. Or
he means the Jews.
They used directed energy weapons, which could... Maybe it was a lightning strike at the New World Order and the HARP weather machine. I mean, you could fucking... You can fill that in with whatever bullshit you want. That's why it's so easy to do this. And that's why it's so hard to like chase it down, right? Because you... You know, if you were to ask him about it, you'd be like, oh, the Jewish space lasers. You'd be like, that's absurd. Actually, it was the 5G towers.
And so they did this during the season that wildfires happen a lot to cover it up, right?
Oh, of course.
So that it would look like a wildfire.
Right. That's like,
so that it would be indistinguishable from a wildfire.
Like if you're going to piss on somebody's leg, you should do it in a rainstorm.
If we get into things like COVID and the riots in 2020, like all of these things accumulated and eventually people...
Hold on, the riots in 2020 were actually real. Oh, there were a lot of conspiracy theories about them though.
And the definition of riot is a little bit fuzzy there because people were protesting police violence and then subjected to more police violence, and then if some people in some cases decided to give the violence right back to the police. I don't know. I'm not sure if I'd call that a riot. That's a civil unrest.
Yeah. There was a lot of escalation on the cops side.
Yes.
And there was in turn escalation on the protesters side.
There's no way Biden got 81 million votes, dude.
But he did. He got 81 million votes, dude.
But like, why does he think that? Why does he think that 81 million people can't possibly vote for Joe Biden over Donald Trump? Like, why does he think that other people must agree with him? There's something wrong with his brain where he can't imagine that someone else could have like other ideas than him, and even a lot of other people could have other ideas than him.
Right. Like, I don't question that this guy believes this stuff, right? I think this guy's a true believer. I just think he's wrong, which is a different thing than thinking he couldn't possibly believe this. No, I understand that
I think he believes it too.
That's what I'm saying is, it would be like me saying that this guy doesn't believe this stuff, that it's impossible for him to believe this stuff, right?
Yeah.
There's just no way. You know, I mean, that's saying that he got more votes than any president in U.S. history. Biden,
yes. But the guy that you voted for, I believe that the guy that this guy voted for got the most votes of anybody who ever lost. So we just had more voters than ever in history.
Yeah. He got the second most votes.
Right. And
you know what they call the guy who gets the second most votes?
The loser.
The loser.
Not always in America, though.
Yeah, that's true.
Potentially the one who...
for 4 years we called him president.
Yeah.
Fucking explain that.
Even campaign. He was campaigning, quote unquote, from his basement. And if you look and you compare Trump rallies to Biden rallies all over the country, it's clear that Biden didn't have any support. So,
but that's because we weren't going to rallies. We weren't. We weren't excited. We weren't like, oh yeah, fuck yeah, Joe Biden's going to stop.
We were excited, but we weren't fucking morons. We weren't going to go hang out in a crowded like amphitheater sneezing all over each other. It was 2020. It was in the middle of a fucking pandemic. Just because these people didn't take it seriously doesn't mean that everyone else also didn't take it seriously.
But more importantly, I mean, I wasn't excited about Biden. You don't have to be like, you can just go vote strategically. You can be like, I am less afraid of this person. And if that's why you're voting for them, you're not very likely to show up at their party. Right? Like,
I mean, there were a bunch of people who would have gone to rallies, but didn't want to get their eyes sneezed on. And that's completely understandable. That could kill you. There was a virus going around. that, contrary to probably this guy's belief, was actually deadly. It killed millions of people.
So, and again, I feel like one of the other things is that I don't think maybe he can fathom the idea that I would go vote for somebody that I wouldn't waste my time going to a rally for, right? Like,
yeah.
Like I don't go to rallies. I didn't go to a Hillary Clinton rally, but I voted for her. I didn't go to any Barack Obama rallies, but I voted for her. I didn't go to no fucking Gavin Newsom events, but I voted for him. So like, I mean, I know it's just me, but there were a lot of people who voted for Trump who didn't go to those rallies too. Explain that, friendo.
How is it that he got a record number of votes? How is it that Biden got more votes than Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama?
Well, one of them is population increased. More people were registered to vote, but also the mail-in ballots. More people voted. Like we had a little bit higher turnout than usual too, like just as a percentage.
Yeah, it turns out when you make voting extremely difficult, fewer people vote, and when you make voting easier, more people vote. That's another thing that these people don't understand.
It's fraud. It's a lie.
So I was going to ask you if you thought I was going to.
I'm sorry, it's not fraud. You're just a moron, Jake.
Was rigged, and you would say what?
Well, yes. Well, yeah, but this is the thing, and this is what's important for people.
Why can't they prove it then, Jake? Why can't they prove? Why is
but damn, the guy worshiping Xenu asking the tough question.
They have. The thing is that what you're talking about is the difference between federal court and civil court. Okay, Trump was trying to bring these cases to civil court because that's all he could do at the time. Okay.
No. That's not a difference between federal court and civil court. He's talking about the difference between criminal court and civil court. There are federal civil courts, and there are state civil courts and local civil courts.
Yeah, and I believe all these were brought in state civil courts, which is where you go to bring these cases. You wouldn't bring them to criminal courts because you weren't accusing someone of a crime.
Supreme Court was a bunch of eunuchs, and they chose not to.
Wait,
he's accusing someone of a crime, but Donald Trump's cases were not accusing someone of a crime.
That's all he could do at the time. Okay. Now the Supreme Court was a bunch of eunuchs, and they chose not to take the case.
Which case was brought to the Supreme Court? You can't just take a case to the Supreme Court and be like, hey, I have a case for you. They're like, oh, fucking fantastic. It has to go, like, the Supreme Court usually will look at cases that went through a federal court and then an appellate court. And then after the appellate court, the Supreme Court may or may not take a case after the appellate court. So this guy he has no idea what he's talking about. Trump probably did try to get people to call the Supreme Court, and they're like, somebody randomly, it's like a Madison Star Moon phone call, right? Where somebody picks up the phone, the person starts yelling about the election being stolen. They're like, I'm the receptionist. Like,
I think it's because the volatility to the situation was such that they thought that there would somehow be a mitigation of damage if they allowed Biden in, when the antithesis is the truth. Obviously, look at the damage that has been done. And if you watch the documentary 2000 Mules, we
watched that on stream for Conspiracy Bingo one night. It was fucking stupid. I don't want to get into the exact. I'm not going to get into the exact reasons why it was stupid, but it was fucking stupid. You can read any number of debunks of it from conservatives and liberals.
What damage is he talking about that was done?
Biden being the president? I don't know. The woke agenda? Okay. Who fucking knows?
The book Rigged.
Oh, that's right. Everyone's woke now.
If you look at every election for the last several decades, these are selection processes.
Even when Trump won?
Look at,
for example, yes, they are selection. Like, that's what the voters do, ostensibly, is select someone to vote for. Like, that's the purpose of primaries. Does he think that it's not the voters doing it? Because he might have a point on the Democratic side because of superdelegates.
Except that he doesn't, because the super delegates have never been used ever at all in any way to swing a primary. So he wouldn't have a point because they've never been used in that way.
But like that's not what he's talking about. He's talking about the general election, which
yes,
there's no such thing as super delegates in a general election. So he has even less of a point.
Went to the Bilderberg meetings and then all of a sudden became president.
Friendo, you get invited to the Bilderberg meeting once you're a certain level in the government or in like corporate power. And so, yeah, that might be one of your steps on the way to the presidency, but that's not really the deciding factor on the presidency so much as the car's going the other way. When you're getting to be to the point where you might be the president, they might invite you to the Bilderberg meeting, which is different than the Build-A-Bear meeting, which would be a lot more fun.
That's the one that I want to go to.
All of a sudden got to run for president.
Who's an example? What's an example of somebody that went to Bilderberg and then became president?
If I'm not mistaken, Bill Clinton. If I'm not mistaken, Barack Obama. I think Hillary Clinton went and then she got to run for president. I want you to try to remember.
No George W. Bush, come on.
Like the Council on Foreign Relations. There's institutions like the Bilderberg Group. There's institutions like the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, the Federal Reserve.
Come on. Why aren't you talking about Bohemian Grove?
The World Economic Forum. All of these institutions seek to monopolize resources and labor. They seek to destroy competition. They seek to consolidate and centralize power. Okay. This is the funny thing about Americans is that they think, oh, well, you know, the elections are corrupt in China. The elections are corrupt in Russia. The elections, of course, they're corrupt in Brazil. Of course, they're corrupt, in Mexico. But corrupt elections in America? Oh, no, that's not possible. And it's like, dude, give me a break. Every time.
No. The position that he's trying to argue against, that he's straw personing, is that there's no evidence that the last couple elections were fraudulent.
Yep.
It's not that it's impossible. Anything's fucking possible.
I don't think the elections themselves are corrupt, but if he wants to talk about gerrymandering, maybe we could talk about that. That's a corrupt process that influences elections.
Democrats lose, what do? They scream election rigging and election fraud. We got to do something about these voting machines. Every time the Republicans lose, what do? Oh, these election fraud, election rigging.
Did the Democrats?
They literally throw a fucking riot.
Wait. He said that the Democrats said we have to do something about these election machines. I don't think anybody said. I mean, there were fucking some fringe people, some fucking people we kind of call blue anon or whatever, who thought that the Russians hacked into the actual voting machines on election day in 2016. There's no evidence of that. And like normal fucking, not normal is the wrong word, like level-headed people who had looked at the evidence and stuff weren't saying that in 2016. So he's just full of shit.
Yep. The day after the election in 2016, what did Hillary Clinton do?
It was the night of.
I don't even think the day after. It was the night of.
She conceded.
Yeah. What did she do?
She conceded.
Yeah. So, you can take that point, Jake, and you can stick it where it belongs.
These voting machines and the centrist view, the objective view, the shamanic view, our elections are corrupt. They've been corrupt for a long time. The only reason JFK got in office because his dad had ties with the mob, with the CIA and the FBI. And guess who killed him?
Nobody. He's still alive.
Because he wouldn't play ball.
Yeah. I think he was saying no to Vietnam. And after he died, his replacement then put in, 250,000 troops into Vietnam, like almost immediately.
Well, and what got us into Vietnam, it was the false flag of the Gulf of Tonkin. Them trying to say that the Vietnamese, hit one of our ships in the Gulf of Tonkin, which was a
I should have put up a link for conspiracy bingo for this, not for intellectual dark web bingo. My God.
It wasn't true.
Yeah.
So Jake, what do you say to people that like you just listed off, the assassination of JFK, Waco, 9/11, the Vegas shooting? I was there, by the way, that day that happened.
I don't think you mentioned the Vegas shooting. You just mentioned that, Grant.
COVID, Maui. What do you say to people who are like, oh, Jake's just a conspiracy theorist and he's gone down the deep rabbit hole? And
he says, do your own research.
I'd say two things. Number one, why do you trust the government and the media when they're proven liars over and over and over again? And number two, the term conspiracy theorist, I would urge people to look into the origins of that term because it came about after JFK was assassinated. And
Nope. I looked into this one myself, just using that you can do that Google Books and do a word search.
Mm-hmm.
Earliest I found it was 1870. What year was the CIA created?
Yeah, that was just a few years after the time traveler went back in time and explained how he killed JFK almost 100 years in the future.
And the other thing is, even before like 1900, that Google word search in books and like publications is going to be like you're going to be capturing less of what was written just because of fucking time and fucking shit lights on fire, or maybe it wasn't indexed, or it's like, you know what I mean? You're not going to find you know what I'm saying? It probably existed before that. So this is just incorrect. This is like 100. The conspiracy theorists have been saying this forever, and it's incorrect.
Do you think they have a conspiracy theory about that?
Oh, right. It's been planted in the past.
Yeah.
It got Mandela effect.
People weren't really saying it. Google just made those books up.
And it was clear to anyone and everyone that was watching the footage that he was shot by more than one bullet from more than one angle. And, look at it like this. If the
Is that clear? I've seen the footage.
Did the investigation into JFK's assassination.
The footage is shit. So it's hard to really tell what was going on at all, right?
I've seen it. I mean, his head goes from like intact to exploded in like a couple frames.
Right, but the footage was shit, right?
Yes.
So
it's like film. It's like home film.
Yeah, it wasn't good footage, so it's hard to tell. Like but
you can tell like his.
Well, you think you can. I can't tell because the footage was shit. But that doesn't mean
you can tell when his head goes from intact to exploded, and it's not like several bullets happen at that time. It's like the time that it takes one bullet to pass through a head, 1/24th of a second.
Right, but what I'm saying is
at most, because it happens in one frame.
I think the footage is bad. It's hard to see what happened, but that doesn't mean that there aren't other ways of knowing what happened, and that the footage is just part of a larger set of evidence as to what happened. So,
but I mean, he's saying like anyone can look at the footage and see all these bullets flying through the air.
But I'm not interested in your analysis of the footage versus a conspiracy theorist analysis of the footage, because neither of you are like forensic video examiners.
Okay.
So, but there was other evidence, other stuff going on. And just because like the footage doesn't look the way that he thinks it needs to look doesn't mean that the things he's saying about it are going to be true. It's just that he's either full of shit or lying.
Warren Commission and their story is true, then why not release all the files? Why are they asking for another 20, 30 years of the files staying classified? Why not release all the files?
Right.
They say that it's damaging to national security. Well, why? If the communists were involved, if Lee Harvey Oswald was a communist and they decided that they wanted to kill JFK, then how is that damaging to national security? The only way it would be damaging to national security is if our own government was involved, is if there are entities that are still alive to this day
so that
were involved.
He's just making up a story about what's in documents that he's never seen.
Yep.
And that's cute, I guess.
In all of that, what it would do is it would expose the apparatus. Okay. Now, think about this. The control of the monetary system through debt-based currency.
Oh no, he's going to do the zeitgeist. Have you ever seen that movie Zeitgeist?
Fiat currency. It's monopoly money. All right.
You talk about fractional reserve banking
Right
and
there is not a conspiracy theory. That's a fact. Okay. Now, when you have a nation that is using a debt-based currency, and when you have a nation whose debt is driving only up and up and up, right? Then basically it's making us all debt slaves. And the only people that are going to be allowed to succeed in that economy are those people that do not threaten that debt-based currency.
I just want to know as opposed to what other, does he mean like gold standard? Is that bullshit about the gold standard? He's like, well, as soon as it's not on the gold standard, it's just debt-based currency. I think that's what he means.
Yeah, I think he means fiat currency by debt-based currency. I mean, all currency is debt-based currency, right?
And
that's what currency represents, debt.
And it's all fiat currency too.
I mean, even like gold standard currency just represented debt. So I think what he means is fiat currency that's not backed by a physical thing.
AFK was talking about getting rid of the debt-based currency and doing like silverback currency with the treasury and stuff like that. He was also
that is exactly what he meant.
Said he wasn't for the war in Vietnam. He was also supposedly poking around in things like S4 and Area 51 and wanting to know what Majestic 12 was up to and stuff like that.
He was also supposedly doing those things, which means who knows.
There's a lot of things. He refused to do things like Operation Northwoods, where the CIA wanted to do false flag attacks on hotels in Florida and blame it on communists in Cuba. So this notion of false flag attacks to move Americans towards some form of a nefarious agenda that is not in their best interest, but rather in the best interest of special interest groups or the people that own the debt-based currency to plunge us into war. And
but if it's debt-based and they own it, don't they just own a bunch of debt now? Like, why would you want to own a bunch of debt? Why would you want to own all of this currency if it's doing all the things that this guy thinks it's doing?
That is not a conspiracy theory at all. That's just objective fact. And most people would rather have the government and the media make up their mind for them, because then they can go about drinking their beer, watching the football game, sitting in their lazy boy, eating their McDonald's, and not thinking at all for themselves.
I mean, that sounds like an okay Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, is there a problem with that?
So, Jake, what did those people that you just described that are drinking beer and not thinking for themselves, what did they see on TV?
I mean, can I drink beer and think for myself? Is that possible? Or do I have to think what Jake thinks if I'm going to drink beer?
It's really interesting because like this is like one of the another thing that like a lot of conspiracist media personalities will say is that, oh, you're not thinking for yourself. But the problem is they're saying that to somebody who doesn't believe them. Right.
Yes.
So it's like they're not really advocating for free thought. What they want is credulity or possibly even like compliance.
Yeah, you are not thinking for yourself means you don't believe what I believe.
Or what I'm telling you to believe in the case of like a propagandist, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That
or a cult member.
Or what did they not see that they should have seen that you saw?
Well, look at it like
you were there.
There were over 1 million people in Washington, D.C. on January 6th.
But there's a million people in Washington, D.C. right now.
Yes. On September 27th, there were over 1 million people in Washington, D.C. That is correct.
And literally less than 1% of those million people were at the Capitol. And
that's because they were in their office or their apartment or like maybe like they had the day off and they were at a park or something, because 1 million fucking people live there. Like
1% of the people that were at the Capitol were charged with violent crimes or were violent. Okay. However, the media, what I call the mockingbird.
I mean, so far, like,
because of
how many people have been charged? Like 800 people?
Oh, I don't know the exact. I mean, I don't know the exact number, but the problem is the problem is the like if we're doing like a division here, the problem is the denominator of 1 million.
Yeah.
Right. He doesn't really, the numerator is not really the problem. It's the denominator that he's using.
Yeah, I mean, it's out of however many people you want it to be. It's out of 24 billion people, 100 billion people.
Charged with violent crimes or were violent. Okay. However, the media, what I call the Mockingbird media, because of Operation Mockingbird, when the CIA infiltrated the media outlets in the 60s and the 70s to control the narrative in the United States, the Mockingbird media is choosing to highlight the very small and isolated incidents of violence in Washington, D.C. at the Capitol on that.
Right. You know, because like a mile and a half away over at like an independently owned coffee shop, some lady was reading a book. There was somebody ordering a McDonald's fucking 2 miles away. Now, why is the media not focusing on the person ordering a McDonald's in Washington, D.C. while all this was going around?
I mean, to his point, yes, not everyone who attended the talk on the eclipse, the rally on the eclipse, went and broke into the Capitol building. No one thinks that everyone that went there broke into the Capitol building. But hundreds of people broke into the Capitol building.
Yeah, the estimates, I think it might have been as many as 1,000, like in and out over the course of the event. And he's like, oh, the media is focused on that. It's like, well, that's the thing that was the incredibly anomalous event that happened that day, sir.
Yeah, that is the big crime.
That day. Now, interesting enough, you have the left side or the left wing of the Operation Mockingbird media. So you have the left wing of the Mockingbird, and they are the ones that are saying it was a violent or deadly insurrection, right? And then they highlight all of these.
I mean, people died, so yeah.
Or vandalism or what have you.
And people died not on accident. So yeah, it was both violent and deadly.
Conservative media, Fox and Newsmax types. And they're saying, oh, it was a mostly peaceful protest. And then they show incidences of the peaceful protest on the inside of the building. They show the incidents, the instance of the police walking me around the building. So they point to these things and say it was a mostly peaceful protest, when the fact of the matter is it's not black, it's not white, it's gray. It's a gray issue. There was violence and chaos on the outside of the building. There's no denying that. And to deny that is asinine. But there was also mostly peaceful protests inside the building.
This is like saying that I broke into your house, but once I broke into your house, I was kind of nice to you.
Yeah, I only stabbed you once.
Well,
do you know how many times I didn't stab you?
Well, it's just more like saying that, like, because yeah, that's a public building, but there was no public access to that building at that time. So stepping inside, you weren't necessarily being violent, but you were trespassing. And for like the purpose, like for many people, for the purpose of trying to stop the steal.
And yes, most of the violence moved with the front line that went from outside at the police barricades, broke through the barricades, went through the barrier of like the physical barrier of the building itself through windows and doors that they had busted through, and then tried to get to the lawmakers who were inside. And yes, that's where the violent was. Most people were not on the front lines. Yes, true. But like, that's like saying, World War II wasn't violent because most people involved in World War II weren't on the front lines.
And it's a good thing that they weren't more organized, honestly.
Yes. Yeah.
And there were cops that were waving some people in because they were so overwhelmed. Thanks to Yogananda Pittman and her failure as an intelligence agent or intelligence officer for the Capitol Police, the fact that she didn't tell Chief Sund anything, the fact that she abandoned Officer Johnson as he's screaming and asking for backup and asking for help and asking to evacuate the congressman. If you look at the situation, Yogananda Pittman, the Pentagon, people like Mark Milley, the intelligence agencies, Christopher Wray, and at the FBI. And,
I mean, if I knew this was going to happen, yeah, somebody over there dropped the fucking ball for sure. But that doesn't mean that they're the ones who caused it. Being unable to prevent something isn't the same as being the cause of something, right? Like, I didn't prevent many things, but I also didn't cause them.
Yep.
A number of people. It was an intelligence.
You know who did have power to prevent it, though?
But Charlie Kirk, actually.
Donald Trump had the power to prevent the events of January 6th, and he did not.
Some people say intelligence failure. It was an intelligence suppression because, in my opinion, they wanted the chaos. They wanted it so that they could go after Trump and all of his supporters. It was a setup. And that's from, the mouth of Officer Johnson, Tariq Johnson, or TK Johnson, the guy that has blown the whistle, Capitol Police officer that blew the whistle. Chief.
I mean, if it was all on the left, that like everyone, on the left wanted the violence and wanted everything that happened on January 6th to happen, then why didn't Trump try to stop it earlier? Like, he waited until like 7 p.m. to try and stop it.
Well, it's because this guy's just lying. He's like making shit up.
Yeah, but like his lies don't make any sense. If you think about it for like 1 fucking second, his lies do not make any sense. If it was everyone on the left who wanted this to happen, then why were all the public people on the left saying, stop, go home, everybody stop doing what you're doing, get out of the Capitol? And the people on the right weren't saying that. I mean, the people in charge on the right, Donald Trump and his cronies, were not saying that. It took them hours to finally say, all right, everyone, go on home. We love you. You're wonderful. Go ahead and go home. Like, why does Donald Trump love someone who's like false flagging, making him look bad?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't think about it that way, but but that's because I kind of hate Republican Democrat political discussions. What I am not, there's a grain of truth here. I think they fucked up. If I knew that shit was going to happen, then they should have known that shit was going to happen. And they certainly didn't appear to know that shit was going to happen, did they?
They did not. Yeah. They did not appear to take it seriously as a threat of a violent mob.
Did the interview with Tucker Carlson.
But you know what they started doing after that happened? All these public events at the White House. Remember, they were putting up huge, like, big barricades?
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah, they've been putting up these big barricades now because they weren't expecting it then. Now they're expecting it.
Sund, the guy that did the interview with Tucker Carlson, he basically came forward and said that he was cut out of the loop. They actually passed a law that he could not invoke the National Guard on his own, that he had to have Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi's permission to invoke the National Guard. He couldn't do it himself.
If it's the D.C. National Guard that's incorrect, it is the President of the United States who activates the Washington, D.C. National Guard.
And what's even crazier is the current chief of police over at the Capitol right now. I believe his name is Manger. That guy signed a non-disclosure agreement that he wouldn't say. And Yogananda Pittman, before she left office, signed a non-disclosure agreement that they would not reveal the information that they knew and that they had regarding the.
This is probably like boilerplate. Like when you resign as the head of the Capitol Police, I guarantee you this shit is boilerplate. Everybody, when they resign, signs a fucking non-disclosure agreement. I bet they sign one when they're hired too. This is probably like boilerplate and just straight up like regular policy.
Intelligence of January 6th prior to. And these people are not coming forward. That's not transparency. So what happened, to answer your question?
Also, like, to the extent that he thinks that like Nancy Pelosi could have called in the National Guard and didn't. Like, the National Guard didn't need to be called in. All that needed to happen was Trump going online and saying, "Hey everyone, stop what you're doing and go home."
We're right.
And
You
we
already
know
right.
that's
Right.
all that needed to happen.
We've already been over that. But the thing is, he's just technically wrong here. The National Guard
he
is
is
under
technically wrong,
the
and
National Guard is under the executive branch. And yes, I understand that Trump could have stopped it. We've been over that.
Okay.
But the National Guard is the executive. The executive calls up the Washington D.C. National Guard.
Versus what the media is saying.
Mm-hmm.
There was chaos. There was a riot. It was not an insurrection. If you want to see what an insurrection looks like, look what happened in Afghanistan. That's what an insurrection looks like. Okay.
So it's only an insurrection if it succeeds.
When you say, Jake, when you say there was violence,
Apparently.
like what is the violence then? And then what's the violence? What's the chaos?
You know, there was people that were combative with police, pushing police shields, getting sprayed with mace, people that were
Beating the
spraying
cops with the American
mace and
flag.
bear spray and stuff like that. I didn't really see anything.
Beating the cops with their own shields, crushing the cops in the door.
Seattle. I didn't see anything like with the stuff that was going on even in DC on December 12th when Antifa and BLM were combative with the police in the streets of Washington, DC.
But the context is very different there. They were not trying to enter the Capitol building to prevent the government from just doing what it was supposed to do that day at the Capitol building. Even if you accept his framing of what was happening with the protests, they were not attempting to enter the Capitol building of the United States and prevent them from going about their business. Like
what you mean is they weren't trying to do a coup.
That's correct.
No riots as far as like burnings of buildings, you know, like what Antifa and BLM were doing all over the country for over 200 days in the summer of love. Nothing like that.
So was there?
Why did he call it the summer of love?
Because that's what a lot of right wingers try to claim that the lefties are calling the 2020 summer.
I've never heard anyone call it that.
Well, that's because it's not super new, but I've been hearing it more lately. That's just, they're trying to claim that maybe you and me might refer to that as a summer of love.
Okay.
Well, yeah, there's broken windows for sure. There was doors that were, you know, damaged and stuff like that.
Stolen, sir, stolen.
But compared to what Antifa and BLM were doing, and there's a lot of people that were saying the BLM and Antifa people that were saying they infiltrated the crowd, and many of them have
Where were they
prosecuted? There is currently a DC commissioner that admitted that she went into the building on January 6th as a counter protester. And then all of a sudden, not only is she not prosecuted, now she's a DC commissioner in 2023. In January 2023, she became a DC commissioner. Huh.
Were there other
Who is he talking about?
I don't know. I'm not familiar with the story that he's giving us. It could be false. It could be a gross misrepresentation of what was going on. Who knows?
Well, that's what they're saying. And that's what, you know, is so shocking is that
I know a number of journalists went into the building and didn't get prosecuted. Is that what he's referring to?
Not only provocateurs, BLM and Antifa, but there were also federal agents and provocateurs in the crowd as well.
So wait, was it a riot then? I'm confused. So it's not a riot and it's not violent, but all the violence and rioting was provocated by Antifa and BLM. That's why it was a violent riot.
Also, what he just said was that there was federal agents too.
Okay. Yeah. So that's why it was a violent riot, but it wasn't a violent riot.
Federal law enforcement, which is so often in cahoots with anti-fascist activists.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that say that the whole thing could have been prevented. And that's why I say that Yogananda Pittman and Mark Milley and Christopher Wray and all this information not getting to Chief Sund, but getting to Yogananda Pittman.
I mean, yes, the whole thing could have been prevented if Donald Trump wasn't the biggest sore loser in the entire world.
So we're again going. I want to work past that part of it when we talk about how it could have been prevented. There could have been more security there. People could have just checked Facebook groups run by people like Charlie Kirk to find out that he was bussing people in from all over the country and be like, oh shit, we should probably have more security here at the Capitol while this is going down.
Barnum and the fact that none of
this is also at a time where the FBI knew that like violent right-wing militia groups were a threat to national security. Like the FBI knew that at this point, and still like there wasn't anywhere close to what should have been done in terms of like preventing this riot from taking place.
Yeah. And I think I don't want to get too much into it, but I think some is a bias about the demographic they thought was going to show up, because it was a lot of older white people showing up. A lot of people of a higher socioeconomic class showed up there. And so there's probably a little bias there. And also I don't know. They fucked up. That's all. I think mostly they fucked up.
Yep. It was not an intelligence failure. It was intelligence suppression, in my personal opinion, because in order to keep people safe, keeping people safe is like 80 to 90% intelligence. And then the other is acting on that intelligence. If these people are intelligence officers, if they are intelligence agents,
it's mostly money.
Military. If
like most people are in danger because they don't have money.
And they would know that. You know what I mean? And they would make sure that this information got to Chief Sund long before January 6th.
And then you said,
not about this in particular, but in terms of like, in danger of starving, or
I guess it was Trump. I mean. I'm filling in the blanks here, but he was not able to call up National Guard for protection because that was up to Pelosi and the
incorrect.
The head of the House, I think is what you said.
Well, kind of. Why was it the National
kind
Guard?
Fucking Xenu warrior over here accidentally asked a difficult question.
There.
Well, because in order for the National Guard to be there, Chief Sund would have to have the permission of Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell. This is a law, so from what I understand, that was passed like a couple of weeks before January 6th. Before, he would have had the ability and the authority to call the National Guard and have them come to the building.
So why did he sign that into law then?
10 to 20,000 National Guard, and they were rejected.
Jake?
By Pelosi. They said they didn't want the optics.
Did Jake forget how laws work?
It was rejected because
also he's just wrong. It's not that
he's also just wrong.
He's not. It's not. It's not that he's forgetting how law. He's just wrong.
But in this fantastical world that he's made up, that Nancy Pelosi took away Donald Trump's power to call up the National Guard. Why would he think that Donald Trump would sign that into law?
And have them come to the building. Trump, from what I understand, offered 10 to 20,000 National Guard, and they were rejected by Pelosi. They said they didn't want the optics. Yeah, it was rejected because of optics. But the thing is that
like I've never heard that claim.
I also have never heard that.
And I
did see the video about Nancy Pelosi trying to coordinate like a response to it.
Well, that's not really her job or whatever. That's weird.
where
if
she
they
goes
really
the poo
cared
poo.
about people's safety, let alone the safety of the Capitol Police or the protesters that day, that's what they would have done. But if you look at our history, as far as intelligence agencies like CIA or FBI and stuff like that, the nature of false flag attacks is infiltration instead of invasion, and basically giving certain people all of the tools necessary to.
So it was peaceful, but it was also not peaceful, and it was Antifa and BLM, and it was the FBI and the CIA, and it was a false flag, but also like nothing really happened. But then Nancy
Correct.
Pelosi should have stopped it by using a power that she doesn't have to call up the National Guard.
Yes.
Do terrible things and then allowing them to pull the trigger.
If you
and
tug
then
on this
prosecute
thread, the
everybody
whole thing will fall apart.
involved.
Mhm.
So I think I'm not surprised that there was such intelligence suppression regarding January 6th.
When did you get thrown in jail?
Oh, I turned myself into the FBI on January 9th.
3 days later.
Mm-hmm.
Was there a warrant out for your arrest at that time?
No, I was wanted for questioning.
Okay. And then how long when would you plead guilty?
I think that was.
Oh, he pled guilty. I didn't know. I thought he was tried and convicted. I didn't know he pled guilty. I forgot that part.
Sometime like in September
Okay,
of
so
2021.
9 months later. Were you in jail for that 9 months?
I was in solitary confinement.
My God. Was the excuse
I
COVID?
did 10 and a half months of solitary. Well, that's the thing. They said that the excuse was COVID, and then they also said the excuse was my safety. But what's crazy is that anytime I was transferred out of that institution, Alexandria, Virginia, they placed me in general population. So that just doesn't make sense. So did COVID and my safety all of a sudden go out the window when I was in Colorado or in Oklahoma? They just
No, that they
Probably, yeah.
or the situation changed, or like, I don't know, prisons are fucked up, so who knows?
I think it was.
Yeah, some
about
prisons don't care
making-
about your safety, Jake. That is a problem. Would you like
example.
that problem addressed? Because I would agree. We should address that problem.
The media chose to use my face to create.
I mean, sir, you were dressed up like Jamiroquai.
a campaign, and they chose to make me their straw man. They labeled me the quote unquote QAnon shaman.
You were called the QAnon shaman by like everybody like doing Q research prior to that. Even some of the QAnon fucking cookers were calling this guy the Q shaman.
Said that I.
Yeah,
gave
I mean,
myself
he
that
he
title.
dressed
That's
up as the mascot, and now he's upset that he was labeled the mascot.
not true at all. The media lied a lot. And I mean, considering Operation Mockingbird, the fact that the media and the government's narrative was in lockstep is no surprise. I mean, the fact that the January 6th committee literally destroyed all of their evidence regarding all the evidence they collected about January 6th. As soon as Donald Trump has
What?
subpoena power, the fact that they destroyed all that evidence, like what would evidence of
Huh?
What the fuck is he talking about?
As soon as Trump has subpoena power. This is weird.
Does Trump have subpoena power? Did January 6th committee destroy evidence? What the fuck is he talking about?
look like 10% for the big guy? Would it look like 33,000 emails being deleted? Would it look like false flag attacks being brushed under the rug? Would it look like foreign proxy wars that transfer public tax dollars into private hands? Would it look like mass human casualties with drone strikes and stuff and all being suppressed? Would it look like somebody like Julian Assange being locked up for blowing the whistle? Would it look like mass surveillance?
So when Julian Assange was initially locked up, there were sexual assault charges against him.
look like, COVID lockdowns and the liability shields for these vaccine corporations being used to protect the vaccine corporations from lawsuits due to the negative side effects of their vaccines? Would it look like riots and chaos in 2020 while the governors and the mayors tell everybody to stand down while people's businesses burn, while cops are assaulted?
Yeah, this is just a gish gallop.
Places are looted and there's no federal investigation, but there's federal investigation going on to January 6th, where they are literally taking.
How many
FBI
conspiracy
agents off of
theories can
terrorism
I
cases.
squeeze into 2 minutes?
I'm thinking it's going to be a minute,
They're taking FBI agents off
but
of
it'll be
drug
3 minutes worth of conspiracy theories.
trafficking cases, off of child molestation cases, off of murder cases, very
what?
real felonies, and they're placing them on misdemeanor cases for January 6th. What would evidence?
The people in these prosecutors' offices are actually probably doing more than one case, friendo.
Everybody can get away with murder now because the justice system is all tied up.
Also, most of these are federal cases, and most of the things he described are state crimes. Generally, there's not a lot of there's federal murder and stuff, but most murderers are charged as state crimes, not as federal crimes. These are like these are like offices of the these are like federal prosecutors. Again, they're not state prosecutors. This is incorrect.
Corruption look like?
So, Jake, you spent 9 months in solitary confinement, except
No. I spent 10 and a half months. 10 and a half months in solitary.
Sorry, man. Sorry. So, and that's while you're waiting for a fair trial, supposedly, right?
You'd think at some point it would have crossed his mind, like, wait, am I the bad guy?
So you can't if he's going because if you notice what he's trying to do is he's trying to keep grifting, right? And part of this grift, it can't be like looking in the mirror and wondering like if you're the problem. Also,
I think he could have grifted on the left. Like he could have, come out and been like,
sure.
"Oh, I've turned a new leaf. Have
Sure.
me on all your shows, lefties."
But that's not what he's doing. So stop writing fanfic about Jamiroquai, sir. But what they're about to say here is going to be really interesting because he's like going to be like, oh, you were in solitary while you were waiting a supposedly fair trial, but then he fucking pled guilty. So, but they're going to they're probably still going to paint it like the procedure in which he admitted to some of the crimes he was charged with. They're going to paint that as if it was like a kangaroo court or something. Watch.
Sorry. So, and that's while you're waiting for a fair trial, supposedly, right?
Well, yes. That's while we were getting the discovery to decide whether or not we wanted to go to trial.
And how are you funding your life at that point?
Well, you don't have to. You're in prison, sir. Grant. It's three hots and a cot, Grant. Grant, what do you mean? He's like, how do you get caviar? What are you doing on the income front while you're in fucking solitary confinement? Nothing, Grant. Nothing. Grant, nothing.
Surprisingly, he's not running an Etsy shop for horn helmets out of his solitary cell.
I was broke at the time, basically. I wasn't funding my life, basically. I didn't have the money for an attorney. So the legal fees stacking up and stuff. They did the pressure.
Wait, no, if you didn't have the money for an attorney, then you got a federal public defender.
Yep.
The pressure was unbelievable. I mean, think about it. You got all these legal fees stacking up. You got the media saying stuff about you that isn't true. You got the government wanting to rake you over the coals. You can't do anything because you're stuck in solitary confinement. You can't defend yourself. You can't pay.
I mean, you did a bunch of crimes, dude.
Do any
and you pleaded guilty to them.
Not all of them, but that's how plea deals work, right? You plead. They may even reduce the some of the crimes or whatever, but yeah. You have to admit guilt. Like part of a plea deal is that you admit guilt.
But I mean, like literally, we all watched him do a bunch of crimes on TV.
Yes, with his arms out
Live.
like this, like he was like he was stepping on stage.
Yes, he was very proud of doing the crimes that he was doing.
Research on your own about the lawyer that you've just chosen to hire. You basically have nothing
Wow.
No power, no control whatsoever. You got a phone call once a day, couple, I got out of it myself for 2 hours.
Yes,
And I was
Jake,
locked
you
down
were
for
a
22.
prisoner. That he's just describing what being a prisoner is.
So this is just going to keep going on and on and on. And I was hoping for more fucking, we're not watching any more of this during the post game. Fuck that. I hate this shit. This is just going on and on and on again about left versus right, BLM and Antifa versus the fucking J6ers, conspiracy bingo in a sentence. And he didn't really even get into any of the meat and potatoes or whatever of the conspiracies. This is just him going out there and fucking scattershotting bullshit. And I've watched another interview with him, and the host tried to stop him from doing it, but he still did it. And this is going to be this guy's fucking shtick from here on out. I think he's just going to go out there and scattershot. I'm stunned that he didn't bring up MK Ultra. That's like one of the few of these that were like, oh yeah, that totally happened. It was very fucked up. They never want to bring that one up.
Well, I guess it's a good thing that he's not on any like actually big platforms. I mean, I'm sure this guy is like probably bigger than us, but
2.46 million subscribers to Grant Cardone's
there
channel.
you go. But like, he's not on like CNN saying all this.
Oh, he got interviews from mainstream media, like right when he was released, but they were a little more critical.
Oh, did he?
They were a little more critical.
Oh, okay.
Like then they were shorter.
Because this guy is non-critical.
Right. In the
He's
interviews,
asked some tough questions, but for the most part, he's very credulous.
when he asked tough questions, it was almost on accident. HK. It's just because
Yeah.
some of the stuff this guy's saying is so dumb that you could be asking what you think is just a polite follow up, and it's actually a gotcha. Like, and so, but that's where this guy's going. That's where his grift is headed. He's just going to do this until he can't, and he's going to try to monetize this. The problem is, because I think he's still on probation, and I bet one of the conditions of his probation is that he not have like a monetized YouTube channel and shit, right? I'd be willing to bet that because before, like leading up to this, it was all like social media stuff, and he was an influencer, and that's how he ended up in the Capitol, essentially, is because he was like a QAnon influencer. And so I would be willing to bet there are heavy restrictions on him. Not that he can't take interviews, but I bet he cannot put up a YouTube channel.
I don't know.
But he also has to take drug tests.
I can't
probably.
imagine he would have enough content to put up a YouTube channel. Like,
Did you just see did you watch the same thing I did where he just fucking blah 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 and then Grant Cardone was like, oh, could you tell us more about the the 37th thing you said, please? And blah 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 blah. Yeah, you can do a YouTube channel.
Yeah, but it was just conspiracy theories, like the same old conspiracy theories that everyone is tired of.
Yes. Yeah, but this is the Q Shaman. Like he could grift it. He could do it, and I guarantee that.
Maybe. I
guarantee the reason he's not is because he's not allowed to while he's on probation. But we don't know this for a fact, and maybe I'm making up my own conspiracy theory. And we're going to go ahead and put a fork in this and go on over to Red Light. HK, do you want to read the show out?
Yes. Thank you for tuning in. This has been Intellectual Dollar Tree. We do this show live on twitch.tv/Echoplex Media every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific. Had to remember that there. After the show, we do Red Light. And if you're listening on the podcast, maybe take some time some week to check us out live and catch Red Light. If you want to support us, you can do that by visiting our website, echoplexmedia.com. You can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/echoplex. And you can also support us at our store, eplex.store. Now here is Boomers by Periscope.